know we are all connected. Universe reflected in its shining light. Everywhere I go, I recognize the faces. All of my relations in this one heart.
It's one of my favorite songs, Johnny Garrett. She's the musician that opens our Women's Wisdom Circle every time we meet, and I love this song that she has written. This is what I know, we are all connected. We inter-are. We are interbeing all the time, whether we recognize it or not. We are interdependent, and our job, our holy assignment as human beings is to be present for each other with open hearts, with great love, with care, with compassion. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I love what Glenda was saying about the human garden, because what I know about being a human being is it's pretty darn complex. Have you noticed? It can be messy, just like a garden. It's messy, it's dirty, sometimes it's full of worms and snakes. It can be delightful. It's filled with 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. And what I know about this idea is that we are always changing. We are part of a dynamic, flowing system where everybody and everything is in process. I am certainly not the same being as a human being that I was when I was 12 years old. I'm very different today. My body's different. The way I see the world is different. So we're always in process, right? And this is a great gift because we give each other the great blessing and the privilege to grow into the most refined, most beautiful being that we can be. There's always hope, if you want to put it that way. And so when I look around, like Glenda said, I look around at what looks like kind of a messy world, and I look at the news, I look at my family situation sometimes, I look at what's going on in our cities and sort of in general in our family's health and our friends' health. And it's not always what it's cracked up to be, is it? Sometimes there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering. And so I ask myself sometimes, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a human being in this crazy, complex world that is filled with so many things that get our attention? Glenda's statistics on some of the things caught my attention. You know, this idea that we've got a lot of human rights issues in our planet, on our planet. We've got a lot of poverty, a lot of hunger. We've got a lot of environmental concerns of polar bears floating out to nowhere on icebergs, yes, don't we? We've got war, we've got, people longing for peace. These are all human things, part of our planet. We're all in this thing together. And when we went out into space and we had an opportunity to look down on this big blue pearl, as the Dalai Lama would call it, we got it. You know what? There's nowhere else to go as human beings. This is it. This is a final frontier for us as far as our groundedness and this planet goes. And so guess what? We've got to work together to bring forth our incredible skillfulness to be able to facilitate each other's becoming, to facilitate sort of a new world order. It's the entire work of Eckhart Tolle in the New Earth, to facilitate a new way of being. Now, this is what I know. It starts with me. Because if I'm not a healthy me, I cannot possibly bring that out into the world and hope to touch other lives. Because if I'm not healthy, I don't have a lot to give. If I'm not loving, if I'm not kind, if I'm not balanced, if I'm not remembering who I am, if I'm not forgiving, it's going to be very hard to take the vibration of all of that with me if I'm not that myself. And so if I can work on becoming the healthiest me I can become, then I have an opportunity to impact this human garden. And through impacting the human garden, guess what? I impact the planet. I impact the universe. So there's a lot of forgetfulness out there. We forget that we're here to comfort, to care for, to be compassionate, to love one another. And so then our work, I think, is to recognize what our purpose is. I came here for love. I came here to be caring, to be compassionate, to be part of a greater whole in a dynamic way that moves it forward, that doesn't suck the life out of it, that doesn't poke holes in it so that the energy leaks out into unbeneficial things. So I picked this PowerPoint today. Remember when you were in kindergarten, they taught you how to cut those little dolls and their hands would all stick together? I have to be honest, half the time my dolls were all separate. So I'm not sure this is a real good metaphor because, well, it probably is a good metaphor because we're working on it, aren't we? We're trying to figure out how to cut those paper dolls out so that they actually are connected. But what I know is this idea of being a human being is really kindergarten stuff. It's what we learn, the basics in kindergarten, right? What do we learn? You got to be kind to each other. You got to help each other. We got to share our stuff. Don't hit each other. Take turns. See, if every one of us could leave today with just those simple ideas, think about how different the world would be. Think how different your day would be. Think how different your experience with your family might be. See, it's really pretty simple because if we all want to get an A+ in Kindergarten 101, we just have to do a few things. And what I know, it's not easy. Oh, it sounds simple, but it's not so easy because this human journey is very complex, see? So we have to learn how to transcend our trigger points, transcend those places where we're judging, transcend those places in ourselves where we're not able to see beyond the surface of whatever that thing is that's going on, whether it's in ourselves, give ourselves permission to be human. Yes. Have you made mistakes? I have. Give yourself permission for do-overs. And certainly if we can do that and be healthy in our own way with that, for ourselves, we're going to be more allowing when we go out into the world. This is the idea of expanding the circle of our care, our concern, and our cooperation. We got to care for ourselves first. We got to love ourselves first. We have to remember our own divinity first. And then we start expanding this circle, little by little by little. And pretty soon, we may absolutely be able to have a universal love and agape love for whatever's going on out there. I love one of the words that Judy DePrete uses in this book. She calls it the large and wonderful we. It's not all about me anymore. It's about the large and wonderful we, so that we facilitate each other's becoming through our own work on ourselves. And so we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing here? What are we creating? What is my participation in this human garden creating? Where are we going with this? What's the purpose of all this? You know, are we being complimentary with it, or are we being competitive with it? Are we being complimentary, or are we being adversarial? You know, oftentimes people ask us how our relationship, Brenda's and my relationship, as a ministry team, has survived as long as it has. And I want to tell you, I'll tell you why. It's because there's no competition. We've been able to expand the circle of care and compassion beyond it's all about me to all about it's about the large and wonderful we, the two of us, and we, all of us. Do you understand how that works? And it's a model that we hope to demonstrate in the way we show up in the world so that it can then impact the way other people show up. It's very hard not to be competitive, not to want to be the best or whatever that is. But if we can actually decide what are we forming together, what are we doing together in this experience, it allows us to embrace this idea that wherever the web of life is torn, Glenda talked about Indra's net. You know, when one string on that net gets plucked, that metaphorical net, when one string gets plucked, guess what? Think of a spider's web. The spider knows, right, when something lands on it, the whole thing starts to vibrate. That's the way our experience of of being in a human dynamic system with everything else in the universe works. When one thing gets affected, everything starts to reverberate. So our job is to find those torn places in the web of life and see how we can mend that, how we can bring our care, our compassion, our love, our kindness to that. I was thinking about going to see Pat in the hospital. Our dear friend Pat has gotten a very difficult diagnosis this week. And as we went to see her in the hospital, it occurred to me, this is the work of humanity. This is the work of love. This is the work of compassion, to be present for one another, to be with each other so that we feel safe in the world. That's what it's about, to extend our circles so that we provide that holding environment for one another when the threads are fragile and kind of torn around the edges, right? It's true. So we've got a common predicament as human beings. Whether we're talking about human rights, or we're talking about poverty, or we're talking about hunger, we're talking about the environment, war, you know what? We're all in this big thing together. We've got a common predicament, and we have got to work together to fix it. We absolutely have to. So I'm reading from Anna Judith's book, Waking the Global Heart. I love the subtitle, Humanity's Rite of Passage from the Love of Power to the Power of Love. And this is what she says. It seems as if we may have lost our purpose and our collective moral compass. Fight and flight seems to have taken precedence over tend and befriend. Conquest and achievement seems to have become more important than nurturing and care. Separation and detachment appear to be held in higher value than compassion and connection. There are many dualities in the world to unite. The politics of left and right, the values of masculine and feminine, the balance between progress and sustainability, civilization and nature. We must turn us and them into I and thou, and ultimately into we. For the first time in history, the entire human population is confronted with a common predicament whose solution will require us to work together. So how do we regain this moral compass, this collective moral compass? Well, I think we need to go back to kindergarten. I think we need to go back and take the Buddhist vows, our 3 Buddhist vows that will help lead us in this new direction. We've got to get a new groove, get a new way of being in the world, take off our armor, live life as an experiment. I know Linda and I, our whole life is one big experiment. Every time something happens, we go, well, that seemed like a good idea at the time. And then we do something different, right? We start over. We're not going to get it right every time, but we can try. We can do it over and over and know that something will guide us in the right direction. This energy of the universe, this divine energy will guide us. So these are the 3 Buddhist vows that I think are meaningful to us today in this Kindergarten 101 curriculum. Do your best not to harm others. Don't hurt. Don't harm in your actions, in your words, in your thoughts. And so that requires us to keep all of our triggers, those push me buttons, in check. Notice when we're being pushed. Notice when we've got our push me buttons going, and think twice before we react. Think twice before we respond. Think twice before we speak. Second vow, help each other. Be present for each other. Be present with each other. Whenever you have an opportunity to lift somebody up, to facilitate someone else's becoming, be present with that. Keep your heart and your mind open. Nurture this compassion, this care. Keep your eyes open like Linda did, so that she thinks twice and reaches deep in her pocket and brings forth the change when she wants to not look at the homeless person. Take care of each other and trust that we can do it. It's not too big of a job. Trust yourself. Third vow, and this is a big one, and this is where we get in trouble. Embrace the world as it is. Embrace the moment as it is. Whatever shows up, embrace that. Work with that thing, however it shows up. Because everything that shows up is here for us to awaken to a new possibility. So here's the invitation for the week. Remember, the only way to impact the beauty and the radiance and the blossoming of this human garden is to be a healthy self. You must be a healthy self first. Do the practices. Remember who you are. Remember your divinity. Expand your awareness to the wonderful we. Beyond me, it's all about me. Remember, we are a wonderful we. This community is exceptional. This community supports each other. This community loves each other. This community knows what's going on with each other. This community is extraordinary. We need to make this community bigger. Expand your circumference of influence. Work together to mend this web of life that's sort of tattered and torn around the edges. You know what? It takes a lot of courage to take off your armor. It takes a lot of courage to try something new. It takes a lot of courage to be willing to expand beyond the little me into the big me, into the big we, the beautiful big we. Embrace the world as it is, because it really is a beautiful